Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Happy New Year. I've got from Denver, Colorado, originally Texan, Catherine Peters, and she is the author of the Itty Bitty Burnout Book. She's going to talk about that strategies, but most notably, she's a professional certified coach, and she's an Energy Leadership Master Practitioner. And we're going to talk big, overarching why wellness isn't working, and a lot of things such as boundaries. And I'm really happy to have her. So, Catherine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah, happy New Year. And briefly introduce yourself, and we'll dive into the podcast.
Well, like you said, I am a coach. I'm an author and a speaker as well. And my specialty is really helping burnt crispy professionals de-stress, heal burnout, finally create capacity to be able to reach the goals that they've been setting for themselves for years on end, and to finally have the capacity to actually enjoy their lives. And so that's what lights me up, and that's what I do every day.
Yeah, interesting. And one thing that really stood out is because I'm very spiritual, and so when you talk about Energy Leadership Master Practitioner, what is that, and what does it entail?
Well, it's on a spectrum from really practical to really woo. So when we're talking about energy in this context, what we're really talking about is how we show up in the world.
Hmm.
And there are 7 different levels of energy in that model. And it ranges from the lowest kind of catabolic energy. And a lot of your medical professionals might be familiar with the terms catabolic versus anabolic. Catabolic being that really kind of destructive, tearing down energy. It's a physical process in the body whereby the cell walls are torn back down by those stress hormones in order to access the energy in the cells so that you can deal with a threat. So, catabolic is really what happens in your body when there's a stress response. We're using it both literally and kind of as a euphemism for the energy with which we present ourselves and the lenses through which we kind of experience our world. The opposite end of the spectrum is anabolic. Those are the feel good hormones like serotonin and dopamine. And what we know is those kinds of hormones optimize systems. So when you're not in a stress response, literal things happen in the body, like your vision expands, your prefrontal cortex notices and has greater fields of awareness. So we mean physical and euphemism for vision. You're able to see more possibilities in that anabolic state. You're able to access spirituality, higher consciousness. And so when you're in an anabolic state of energy, it totally transforms the solutions that are available to you, the thoughts that are available to you, and thereby the actions and results that are available to you.
Mm. Um, and what is the catalyst? How do you change catabolic to anabolic energy?
Well, there's a number of ways, but the most powerful tool you have at your disposal is your mind. And this is because we think our thoughts as kind of like reading the news. It's just what is, right? Our thoughts are our reality. But in fact, when I'm working with my people who are stressed out, overwhelmed, totally over it in burnout, it is never their circumstances that are causing the stress. It is always and only their thoughts about their circumstances. And most of my clients and my audiences, when they hear me say that for the first time, want to punch me in the face. Because immediately our minds start going to, yeah, but you're not in my shoes. You don't know what I'm dealing with. I've got the sick parents or really tough boss or clients or an angry spouse or the barking dog. I mean, you have no idea what I'm going through. Maybe you're struggling with health issues or financial issues, big challenges. So, of course, you think it's the circumstances. Those are the circumstances that are causing you stress. but it's really your thoughts about those circumstances. It's only a problem when you think it's a problem. So we look at the thoughts that are creating the stress responses, that are keeping us in those catabolic physical and emotional states. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what are some of the most like top one or two thought patterns that create anxiety and stress about certain things?
Mm. Well, it's always the lens of judgment, right? Because when you think about your thoughts, it's very meta, but when you think about your thoughts, they really are always judgments, right? And one of my favorite sayings by a famous statistician called George Box, and he said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So the way I think of that when I'm talking about our human brains is that our perceptions are always incomplete, right? And they're always only our limited view of the totality of circumstances, right? So by default, it's a judgment. And we as human beings are very, very judgy creatures. So it's really by design. We have to make these split-second judgments about what's safe, what's dangerous, what's good, what's bad, but we extend that to what's right, what's wrong, right? Our brains are very black and white. And you'll know that you are in a space of judgment when you hear the words should or shouldn't in your thoughts, in those sentences in your brain. And so our experiences when we're in a stress response are always some form of this shouldn't be happening, right? Instead of, or even this should be happening. He should be that way. She should be different. I should be better. I shouldn't have to struggle so much. This shouldn't be so hard.
Mm,
That's a clue that you're in a space of heavy judgment, and that's going to get in the way. Anytime you have a lot of heavy judgment, and we all do, but anytime you do that, you're really limiting possibility because everything does become so binary and you see your circumstances as wrong. You're
yeah.
judging them as wrong.
Yeah. Interesting. Judgment. Yeah. I heard like, especially during the holidays, like expectations and a lot of, a lot of people have come to hate the holidays just because it's just like, nonstop and you have to be with people you don't like or just kind of drain your energy. And, it can be a very stressful time. Um, uh, what I found also interesting in learning about you is you talk about why wellness isn't working and like all these companies have wellness programs, and I'm curious why wellness doesn't work.
Oh, this is a big one. So when we're stressed, our regular self-care patterns tend to fall away, right? It's really hard because our focus narrows and is limited to focusing on a threat. So we're focused on the deadline, we're focused on being the peacemaker, we're focused on being well liked or whatever it is, instead of focusing more globally on our regular healthcare routines. When your brain is in stress, it's problem focused, not solution focused. So not only do your regular kind of self-care routines fall away, you also have these thoughts, these judgment thoughts. If you're a people pleaser, I can't say no, right? If you have thoughts about time scarcity, there's not enough time. There's no way I don't have time to do that. If you have judgments about your own self-worth, well, yeah, that would be nice, but XYZ is more important. My kids are more important. My husband is more important. My boss and my clients are more important. I come to the bottom of the list. All of these we perceive as circumstances when actually there are thoughts about the circumstances. When you have different thoughts, you can make different choices. Like, I have to nourish myself first. I have to put on my oxygen mask first, or else I'm not going to be able to serve my clients, my family, my loved ones, my friends, right? That's a different thought that results in a different action. Like, ooh, I better take that 10 minutes for meditation, right?
Yeah.
We have all sorts of thoughts that really affect how capable we are of tapping into the routines that we know are out there.
Mm.
And we also have thoughts that keep us from placing value on wellness. I mean, tell me, Chris, in your own world, like what are some of the reasons that maybe your self-care routines fall to the bottom of the list?
Me, sometimes just unexpected things, like sometimes like maybe like a flat tire or car battery goes out, or some just something random just out of the blue, but it's urgent, but it's not it's like crises, that sort of thing.
Right. So something is always usurping in this kind of hierarchy in your mind. Something usurps the place of that self-care, right? Instead of the self-care being kind of like inviolate, like brushing your teeth. I mean, it's something that has to happen. You wouldn't, although I say this with a grain of salt because some people do, but you wouldn't like never stop drinking water or stop consuming food. You would die, right? At some point, you have to do that. And we don't tend to place the same importance on these self-care routines that actually are going to save us time, are going to save us energy, are going to refill and nourish us so that we can accomplish more and can accomplish our goals.
Mm, interesting. We often know like a lot of causes of stress and burnout, but then you talk about some of the hidden causes of stress and burnout. So what are those?
So, of course, your thoughts, right? This is always my first go-to with my clients because if we're not learning how to manage our minds, nothing else works. It's always a really temporary fix. When we learn how to manage our minds and our thoughts about our circumstances, those fixes can really become more permanent and more valuable. Some other hidden sources of stress and burnout, uh the your environment. This is a big one that a lot of people just don't even really notice. For example, if you have a like low level ambient noise, have you ever had that experience where like there's a really loud fan, or maybe there's hammering going outside, or maybe a barking dog, and suddenly the noise stops and you're just like that kind of sigh of relief?
Yeah.
We have things like that in our environment that actually really have an effect on our sense of well-being. And they're these low-grade stressors. So things like ambient noise, things like overhead lighting, things like not having an ergonomic workspace. And all of these have some pretty easy fixes. So that's one place I like to go to. Um, Also, visual clutter, like all the tabs that are open in our brains often are corresponding in our environments where we got piles of different things, or we have a million different tabs open in our browser, or a ton of icons on our smartphones. The more visual clutter that you can clear, your brain quits hitching. You stop noticing it, but it's still happening. Like when you see the pile, oh, I gotta clean that up. When you see the pile of laundry, oh, I gotta put that away. When you see all the open tabs, you're living in this sense of overwhelm that you don't often even recognize is happening. So just clearing that out also can bring that sense of
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, in Texas here we have a lot of trucks and like large mufflers, and or just these loud like crashing sounds. Just yeah, I mean, so one way I just got a kind of these decibel, just I just put it on, and it just
yes,
blocks out everything. Um
yes.
Uh,
I actually went to a conference when I was writing the book. It was during that time period. And I was in a huge hotel ballroom with 300 of my closest friends, and there were these long tables, and you were paired with people sitting across from you, and it was like 3 hours of networking. So you go from conversation to conversation to I I started fading. The noise level was just unreal, and it was really hard to hear the person across from me.
yeah.
And I tell this story in the book. This little old lady sits, plops herself down across from me, and she's got this really low, deep, calm voice. And she says, "Honey, you look exhausted." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm struggling." And she had these big old headphones on, like you would see a DJ wearing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She's like, "Try these." And she puts them on my ears, and immediately my stress level drops. And I had my little noise canceling earbuds in my purse at the time. I'm like, this is a game changer. Gave her back her headphones, put in my noise canceling earbuds, and there's settings, right? So that you can hear the person across from you, but not all the ambient noise. It made such a dramatic difference in my energy level, in my sense of well-being. That is a perfect example of an environmental stressor that you're not even aware of, but you know you're suffering.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Um, and another question I have for you is, you talk about boundary setting, and you talked about people pleasing, and for a lot of people it's hard to set boundaries because they start, once they set that boundary they feel guilt or shame.
Yes.
So how do you build better boundaries? And a lot of people think you need to be an kind of aggressive or assertive to set boundaries, but you can do it politely. How do you do that?
I actually I teach a 1 hour workshop on this. So it's a complex issue, and I get that. So I'm going to give you just a couple of kind of sound bites around the biggest takeaways and the things that I find most helpful with my clients and with my audiences. And the first is maybe lose the word boundaries, right? Because when we think of boundaries, what do we think of? We think of borders between countries. We think of, all of the conflict and wars. I mean, people die over boundaries. We think of the nasty neighbor and those property lines and taking people to court. I mean, there's so much like fractious energy around the concept of boundaries. So what I like to say is let's just set aside that word. What you're really doing is having a conversation with somebody. That's it. And you're kind of agreeing on the container within which, or the terms of whatever you're talking about, right? So let's say that there's a big assignment that your boss just dropped on you, and you don't know how you're going to get it done, and you're already working 60 hours this week, and there's no way, right? How do you maintain boundaries around your workload, around your time? You have a conversation and you say, "Okay, here's what I've got on my plate. Here's the due dates. Work with me to help me figure out what the priority is. When do you need this by? And what can I delay? What can I push off in order to make that happen? I want to help you," right? So boundaries isn't usually about like this hard line in the sand. It's usually a conversation. I had one client who came to me in such a severe state of burnout. She'd been put in this leadership development program in her organization, and they kind of like took her out of it because they're like, "We don't think you're ready for this. Like, you're struggling." So she got a coach instead. So the first thing we worked on is boundaries, because she was such a people pleaser and she didn't know how to say no. So we worked on having conversations. We worked on how to use the yes and, which is another great technique. Yes, I can do that for you. And we need to talk about time frame. We need to talk about adjustment of workflow, right? She found and she put boundaries around her emails. She wasn't going to answer every email within 15 minutes. She didn't have this conversation with her organization or her department or her boss. She just did it, right? And she was shocked to discover that suddenly she had so much more time and peace and control, and she didn't have to once proclaim a boundary, right? We worked on what her boundaries were and how to voice them without stating, here's my boundary, don't cross it. And it's so simple, but so many people are even afraid to have a conversation.
Yeah. The other very interesting, I know we have a couple few more minutes remaining, and how can people find you? Talk about your book as well, and and how can people find you?
Very exciting. So I am easy to find. I made it easy to find me on purpose. It's Cat the Coach. It's with a C, C-A-T, Cat the Coach. And it's catthecoach.com. That's my website. There's also a page on my website that has a link so that you can purchase the book. There's a page about the book on the website. I'm at Cat the Coach on Instagram. I'm at Cat the Coach on YouTube. I do weekly videos. I actually do a couple videos a week talking about all of these topics around stress and burnout and boundaries and wellness and self-care and managing your mind, all the things. So if you're interested in the book, it will be available on Amazon beginning on January 7th is the official launch. So I think by the time people see this, it will be officially launched. Just look for the Itty Bitty Burnout Book. If that's too much to remember, and trust me, I understand if it is, just go to catthecoach.com and there'll be a page with a link to buy the book.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. And I really enjoyed your energy and your insights, and keep up the great work, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. A Happy New Year to you as well.